elemental plane of water, also known as the bottomless deep, is an infinite expanse of brilliantly sea green water. Quote, "The nature of water is to flow, not like the gusting wind or the leaping flame, but smoothly and steadily. It is the rhythm of the tide, the nectar of life, the bitter tears of mourning, and the balm of sympathy and healing. Given time, it can erode all in its path." End quote. As I said previously, the elemental plane of water is an infinite expanse of sea green colored water. Now, you might be thinking of an endless ocean, and you'd be partially right. But an ocean has a surface with air above it, and it has a sea floor at its bottom. The plane of water is just water. It's an ocean that expands in all directions, with no air above or earth below. Except in 5th edition, where it does have a surface and a sea floor. This is because in 5th edition, the closer you get to the material plane, while on an elemental plane, the more normal the environment looks, with other elements mixing in, creating sites you'd expect to see on the Prime. The idea in 5th edition is that most known locations that you would visit on the plane are located on this border region near the prime material plane, so the description in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide is about these border regions. Presumably, if you went deeper into the plane, it would resemble the descriptions of older editions where the whole plane is all water. However, since every other edition doesn't use this geography, and 99% of the lore from this video is from those editions, I will be using the former description for most parts of the video. Now, let's answer a couple questions that you might have about the plane of water. One is that if there's no bottom or seafloor, since it goes on infinitely, what about the plant life? Does the plane of water have kelp or coral reefs? And the answer is yes, it does have coral reefs. It's just that instead of growing from the floor, they are free-floating masses, which continue to grow in all directions, taking on windy, snaky appearances. Another question is, what is the water like? Is it freshwater or saltwater? Tropical or Arctic? Well, according to 2nd edition, the entire plane consists of fresh water that is neither too warm or too cold. It is also crystal clear and sweet to the taste. In spite of this, the magic of the plane sustains all aquatic life. So whether a marine creature is acclimated to fresh or saltwater, tropical or Arctic, or what have you, it finds itself always comfortable here and capable of surviving. Now, in 3rd edition, this isn't the case. All kinds of aquatic life live here, but they don't mingle together. Different parts of the plane simply have different environments. So tropical fish will live in areas that are warmer, saltwater animals will live in the parts of the plane that are saline, etc. The pressure on the plane of water is equivalent to the pressure just below the surface of a regular prime material ocean, and it is uniform across the entire plane, regardless of how deep you go. Additionally, the entire plane is illuminated by soft greens and blues that radiate from the water itself. So you don't need dark vision or some sort of underwater lantern in order to see here. The whole plane is lit up. The water here is always moving, and settlements are formed in chunks of jetsam and flotsam that gradually drift through the plane. As one moves towards the plane of Earth, the presence of debris and muck increases until you are no longer swimming, but wading through thick, slimy muck in the para-elemental plane of ooze. This area of the bottomless depths that borders the plane of ooze is called the Silt Flats. In the opposite direction, towards the plane of air, the water grows chillier and clustered with ice chunks until you reach a white wall of solid ice at the para-elemental plane of ice. The region of the plane of water closest to the plane of ice is called the Sea of Ice. Towards the positive energy plane, the water gets warmer as its molecules become more and more active until it flows into the quasi-elemental plane of steam. And then finally, towards the negative energy plane, the water gets more bitter and salty as the water evaporates, making the ratio more and more salty, until finally all the water is gone and you have arrived in the quasi-elemental plane of salt. Now, that description's from 1st edition, and it makes sense. As the water goes away, you're left with nothing but salt, and so you have the quasi-elemental plane of salt. But that obviously implies that the plane of water is composed of salt water. So I guess in 1st edition it is. The question is then, what about in 2nd edition, where it's composed entirely of fresh water? Where does the quasi-elemental plane of salt come from? So, yeah, take that bit of information with a grain of salt. See what I did there? Anyways, on to travel. So, given its relatively low hostility, the plane of water is one of the most common inner planes for outsiders to visit, and it has more portals connected to it than any other inner plane except for air. So, how do you get here? Well, you obviously have the normal ways of getting to any plane, such as the doors in the city of Sigil, and spells such as Gate and Plane Shift. If using Plane Shift, the material component is a tuning fork made of lead tuned to the note A. One thing to keep in mind is that opening a portal to the elemental plane of water anywhere that's not also underwater will cause water to spill out, assuming the plane you're on has gravity to pull the water out with, potentially drowning someone who opened the gate within an enclosed space. Like all inner planes, you can access it via the ethereal plane by going through the correct color curtain. And like all 4 major elemental planes, you can get to it via an elemental vortex on the prime material plane. There are 3 types of vortices to the plane of water. The first are found deep within oceans. When the tide and energies of the multiverse are just right, magical channels form which can take people to the plane. Few land dwellers can survive the deep water pressures, let alone find the channels to begin with. The second kind are storm surges, created when a typhoon or hurricane becomes so strong it creates a connection to the plane of water. And the last kind of elemental vortex is whirlpools, specifically whirlpools created when tidal forces align with other sources of magical energy, which opens a portal to this plane. Besides those, there are 3 recorded portals to the elemental plane of water, all located within important large planar bodies of water. There's one in Muspelheim, the second layer of Isgard, a land of fire and volcanic rock that the god of fire giants, Searcher, calls home. Here, there is a shimmering pool called the Silver Eye, which if gazed into, one can see a glimpse of their future. Additionally, anyone who wades into the 3-foot deep pool carrying a staff of yew wood can open a gate to the plane of water. This gate lasts 1 hour and encompasses the entire 300-foot diameter pool, meaning one could move quite the large force through. There's another in the river Oceanus, which holds the purest water outside the elemental plane of water. Only the Cardinals of Elysium know its true location, who ensure no evil-aligned creature learns it, which seems pointless since only creatures of pure heart can open the gate anyways. And the last is located in the river Styx, but I couldn't find any details on this one. Okay, real quick, because I hate to interrupt, but if you guys are liking the video, I would be very appreciative if you liked it, subscribed to the channel, or commented something as it helps the video's algorithm. I do read all my comments, so say something you want me to read, whether it's a critique of the video, an idea for another video I could do, or just something cool that happened in your own campaign. I also have a Patreon if you want to support me for only $5. I just put up a stat block specifically for this video, and the lore of the creature is free to read, so even if you don't pay, you can at least read that. Anyways, back to the video. Okay, so now that you've got to the plane of water, how do you travel within it? Like all inner planes, a non-native will not be able to find their way around without a native guide. This is in part due to the lack of the sensation of up or down, making it basically impossible to tell what direction you are facing. Additionally, the currents of the plane can throw you off course, sometimes so subtly you don't even notice. These currents also move the settlements, cities, and basically all locations on the plane, making it extremely difficult to find for a non-native, as their location isn't static. Traveling to a specific destination requires divination magic or a guide knowledgeable in the currents. In 1st and 3rd edition, there is subjective gravity, meaning you could choose your own down direction and fall in the direction you wish to travel. But in 2nd edition, there is no gravity, so that option isn't available. The plane of water rewards good swimmers, so creatures with an innate swim speed move twice as fast. Additionally, many explorers utilize mounts such as giant seahorses, hippocampi, manta rays, and water elementals. In 3rd edition, creatures with a fly speed have that speed halved, and their maneuverability class is reduced by 1. Properties. Okay, so first let's go over the physical properties of the plane of water. First up is breathing. So obviously the plane of water is almost all water with no air. So in order to survive here, you will need the ability to breathe water, which can be done with spells such as water breathing or airy water, a ring of water breathing, or the touch of a Marid genie. Vision and senses. In the cleanest areas of water, vision is reduced to 60 feet. This is because of the blue-green radiance that permeates everything, along with silt clouds, algae, and other impurities blocking vision. However, creatures that are used to being underwater, such as basically any aquatic race, can see twice as far. According to First Edition, infravision accomplishes nothing due to the varying temperatures of the water, while in Second Edition it does work, but it functions at half range. That being said, I don't really understand how infravision would be useful at all since the entire plane is illuminated by light at all times. Sound carries much further here, but non-natives cannot discern what direction it originates from due to the way it moves through water. Gravity. In First and Third Edition, the plane of water has subjective gravity, meaning at any point you can choose what your down direction is and then fall in the chosen direction. Since you're underwater, you do fall slower, 200 feet per minute, and max fall damage is only 6d6 instead of 20d6. In Second Edition, there is no gravity at all. The plane has no up, down, top, or bottom, meaning you can face any direction without feeling disoriented. Also, since there's no gravity, there's no water pressure either in Second Edition. In Third Edition, there technically is pressure, but it is roughly equivalent to a few feet underwater regardless of depth. Combat. One thing that's pretty obvious but also very easy to forget about if you're a dungeon master running a session on the plane of water is that fighting here has all of the same effects of fighting underwater. The exact rules are going to vary by edition, but most forms of physical attacks are going to have huge downsides or straight up not work because of these physics. Food and water. Okay, so obviously there's plenty of fresh water around to drink, and there is plenty of food if you like fish. However, you can't feasibly cook it though, so you would be eating it raw. The last physical property of the plane is that in Third Edition, creatures made of fire would take 1d10 damage per round spent here, as the water is actively extinguishing their body. Magical. Now that we talked about the physical properties, let's discuss the magical properties of the elemental plane of water. One thing to keep in mind is you need to worry about the physical limitations of being underwater. Any fire-based magic will not function. Spells like Ice Storm, which rains down projectiles, tend to just drift harmlessly instead. Lightning spells will conduct in the water around the point of origin. So, for example, a lightning bolt spell's area of effect would be a sphere, similar to a fireball spell, instead of a line, and it would be centered on the caster, making lightning magic extremely dangerous to use on this plane. Since they are purely physical limitations, due to the entire plane being submerged in water, none of these properties can be overcome with spell keys. For those of you who don't know what that is, spell keys are specific ways of casting spells that can bypass the restrictions a certain plane of existence has on spells. These come from the Second Edition Planescape campaign setting. As far as I'm aware, these aren't in any other edition. For the plane of water, they are usually teeth or bones of aquatic creatures with magical inscriptions carved upon them by master artisans, as the movements must be delicate and precise. So, if they can't bypass these physical limitations I just mentioned, let's talk about the restrictions that they can remove. In Second Edition, air and earth magic is diminished, meaning they function as if the caster was one level lower, and spells higher than 4th level are impossible. Additionally, water magic is enhanced, meaning it functions as if the caster was one level higher, and saving throws made against them are made at -1. Like all inner planes, conjuration magic can only summon creatures from the plane you're on, or a bordering plane. So for the plane of water, you could summon creatures from the elemental plane of water, the para-elemental planes of ooze and ice, the quasi-elemental planes of salt and steam, and the ethereal plane. In Third Edition, spells and spell-like abilities that use or create water are empowered and extended, meaning the duration is doubled and the range is increased. So a water-breathing spell would last 4 hours per level instead of the usual 2. Spells and spell-like abilities that use or create fire are impeded, meaning a successful spellcraft check must be made or the spell fails. Encounters. So, what kind of environmental hazards can you expect to find on the elemental plane of water? The first are elemental pockets. These are pockets of other elements that have found their way into the plane of water. In terms of what they look like or how they manifest on this plane, most of them are pretty straightforward. Pockets of air are giant air bubbles, and pockets of earth are just floating chunks of stone. Standouts include pockets of ooze, which slowly worm their way through the plane, pockets of magma, which the water hardens into stone, resembling earth pockets, and pockets of fire, which are extraordinarily rare and are usually extinguished instantly. Although these can create hotspots, areas where the water is near or above boiling point, dealing 1d10 fire damage per round, and may contain a vortex to the plane of fire. Currents. The bottomless deep always has currents flowing through it, ranging from delicate and nearly undetectable to raging torrents that will carry you off instantly. These are the greatest obstacles for navigating, as a subtle current you don't even know exists can nudge you off course. Natives to the plane can sense them and compensate for the drift, whereas non-natives must make a check to not go off course. Strong currents move at 2d6 times 10 feet per minute, and a creature must be able to move faster than this if they want to make progress in the opposite direction. Currents on the plane of water often change, shift, or reverse, far more often than currents on the prime. Sometimes a current might only last a few seconds, while another lasts centuries. Steam currents function the same as regular currents, but are made of steam and deal 46 damage. Whirlpools are created when two powerful currents touch each other. They suck everything nearby in, requiring a successful check to avoid, and once sucked in, creatures are beaten by flotsam and jetsam, taking 1d6 damage per round until they can fight their way out. 30% of whirlpools on the plane of water contain a portal in their heart, which leads to another part of the plane or to the prime material plane. Tidal bores are the strongest of the currents, and these are great fluid avalanches coursing through the plane. These deal 2d10 damage on a failed check and drag the victim several miles. Burn water. This occurs when a pocket of elemental ooze or mineral dissolves, mixing with elemental water and forming a pocket of acidic water which deals 2d10 damage upon entering, half on a successful save versus breath weapon, and all items on the person must make a save versus acid or be destroyed. Red tides. Red tides are fast currents of water infected with a disease or parasite. Anyone entering a red tide must make a successful save, and make another save each minute spent there, or be inflicted with a disease. In 2nd edition, if the victim is not breathing water, such as relying on the spell No Breath, then they suffer a debilitating disease which saps their strength to 2 and takes 1d3 weeks to recover. If they are breathing water, such as through a water breathing spell, then they suffer a fatal disease. So all healing is at 10% effectiveness, cure wounds just straight up doesn't work, they lose 2 charisma each month permanently, and they die in 1d6 months. In 3rd edition, they always suffered a blinding sickness. Those that can manipulate currents have used these as weapons, shunting a red tide into a city or stronghold to cripple their enemies. If you're interested, I created a 5th edition stat block for a water elemental corrupted by a red tide, which you can find on my Patreon. And the last hazard you can encounter on the plane of water are the effects of spells. So if the contact other plane spell is cast targeting a being on the plane of water, a silvery ball the size of a cabbage appears on this plane. If someone touches one of these, it pops and puts the sender's question in their mind. Spells that summon beings from here appear as shiny spheres that radiate golden, greenish, or bluish light, and water elementals are charmed to it. Marids are immune to these, but occasionally touch one anyway for a chance at glory. If one were to touch these summoning spheres, they would be summoned to the caster and treated as an elemental for the purposes of the spell, meaning they'd probably be forced to follow commands. Inhabitants. Water is the giver of life. And because of this, the elemental plane of water has a large variety of native creatures. In general, creatures here tend to be playful and cruel, quick to torment and drown explorers relying on magic to survive here. So first let's talk about the native elementals. First are the true elementals. Technically, almost all the creatures native to the plane are elementals in terms of creature type, but true water elementals are the ones most people think of when they hear the word water elemental, and are the ones pictured in the monster manual entry for elementals. They usually resemble cresting waves made entirely out of elemental water. Since they are made of water in a plane of all water, they tend to blend in with their surroundings, at least from the point of view of outsiders, but natives of the plane can always see other natives. While in their home plane, water elementals are immune to spells that affect water, and in 1st edition, they were vulnerable to fire for some reason. Just like the water they are made of, elementals tend to go with the flow, being apathetic and easygoing, and usually taking the easiest course. They can be easily convinced to serve as elemental guides, if given the correct payment, but will stop to examine every current they come across unless the traveler asserts their determination in getting the guide to keep moving. Their preferred form of payment is 100 gold pieces worth of interesting scents and potions per hour of service. This is because they have an excellent sense of taste, which is how they detect one another, and sweet water potions are a favorite of theirs, these being potions that turn liquids into fresh water. Unlike most elementals that tend to keep to themselves and embody a force of nature, water elementals are territorial, forming vast kingdoms which can be easily identified by the absence of other creatures, as they don't tolerate other kinds. These are ruled by the wisest or most powerful of the elementals. The next creature we're going to talk about, and probably one of the most important ones, are the Marids. Marids are the genies of water. They are, quote, said to be born of the ocean, with currents as their muscles and pearls as their teeth, end quote. They are the most powerful and handsome of genie kind, as well as the most individualistic and chaotic. They despise serving others, making them difficult to convince to perform services. Even if convinced through bribery or flattery, they are easily distracted, finding other adventures to go on instead. Most conjurers consider Marids not worth the trouble, and is why magic items that control Marids are rare as opposed to other genie-controlling items. They all live in an empire ruled by Kalbari al-Durat al-Amwaj ibn Jari, Great Padishah of the Marids, the Pearl of the Sea, the Keeper of the Empire, the Mother of Foam, Mistress of the Rivers, Savior of Fish, the Maharaja of the Oceans, Emir of all currents, Patron of waterspouts, the Parent of the waves, and so on. The word empire is used loosely here, as they are reclusive, independent beings that live in burgs scattered across the plain and refuse to work under a single leader for long. Additionally, they all assert to be of noble lineage, taking on any titles that they can claim, the lowest ones using Shah, Atabeg, or Mufti. While all genies are ostentatious and obsessed with status, Marids are especially known for their pride and egos. They see all other races as inferior, but tolerate Jan and Jin, while despising the Dao and Afrit. Most other races, such as humans, are seen as nothing and usually ignored. Marid are expert tellers of stories, specifically ones that emphasize their own abilities and belittle others. If a planeswalker can amuse them with great storytelling, they will let them go on their way, or maybe even aid them. But if they fail to amuse them, then they are considered a nuisance and might be exterminated the way an insect flying around your face would be, as offending a Marid is a capital crime. Marid households are built near coral masses or elemental pockets, as they don't like to live out in the open. They all have the power to bestow the ability to breathe water for days at a time to another creature, but they can also remove temporary water-breathing abilities from someone even if the Marid was not the one who bestowed it. So an adventurer operating under a breathe water spell could have it completely negated by an annoyed Marid. However, permanent water-breathing effects such as a ring of water breathing can't be negated by this ability. Water Weirds. While technically a type of water elemental, most natives, including the true water elementals, consider water weirds as dangerous monsters separate from their stock. They form on the areas of the plane that border the quasi-elemental plane of salt, where negative energy seeps into the water, and they are hated by all else that lives here. This negative energy is probably what causes them to feed on the essence of others. Additionally, they were famed for their powers of divination and healing, and were often conjured to protect pools of water. Hydrax. These are water elementals that have taken to the lawful alignment, specifically lawful evil or lawful neutral. They resemble 8-foot-long crabs made of ice. They spend their time constructing complex cities and beautiful devices, but seldom work together. Instead, each waits their turn to add to the communal artwork. Hydrax can cast Detect Magic, Web, Dispel Magic, Wall of Ice, and Transmute Dust to Water 3 times per day and Reflecting Pool once per week. Because of their icy forms, they take max damage from fire. Nereids take the form of transparent, beautiful human females. They are so transparent, they are 95% invisible while submerged in water. The only clothes they wore was a white shawl around their neck which contained their soul, and if destroyed, they would dissolve. So, anyone who steals a Nereid's shawl can make it do whatever they want, since they'll fear their own demise. Any male that looks at a Nereid will be incapable of harming her, and see all their actions as casual flirtations. The kiss of a Nereid can instantly drown people, but it is said to bring blissful ecstasy. They are chaotic and capricious, like the waters they dwell in, and can be any chaotic alignment. Undine. Undine are water elementals that have taken on the chaotic good alignment. They resemble 12-foot long, transparent snakes made of water. However, it changes its form easily, such as one with many appendages to manipulate objects. It appears invisible while immersed in water and can cast detect magic, web, its web is made of ice formations, dispel magic, ice storm, and transmute dust to water 3 times per day. It takes double damage from fire for some reason I couldn't find an answer to. They will aid those they deem worthy, but other than that, no one knows their social structures or goals. Water mephits. As the name suggests, are mephits made entirely out of water. They are always cheerful, wanting to play and splash others with water and create currents. This playful manner was extreme to the point of annoying most other creatures. Triton. Tritons are blue-skinned humanoids with webbed hands and feet and dorsal fins on their calves. While their societies can be found all over the oceans of the prime material plane, their race originates from the elemental plane of water. The Tritons are a very proud but also kind-hearted people who believe themselves to be entitled to respect from other races due to their noble sacrifices for protecting various worlds. On the plane of water, they typically serve as bodyguards or courtiers of noble Marids. Vardigs, also known as fluid brutes, are the elemental grues of water. Grues being neutral evil elementals that are sort of like the animals of the inner planes, taking on the roles of pets, guards, and other servants. Vardigs can take on the appearance of a pool, fountain, or even larger bodies of water, but the greenish tint makes the bigger ones noticeably different. However, their true form is a translucent blob with clawed legs and pipe-like protrusions that propel the creature by shooting water. These stun enemies and can be shoved down a creature's nostrils to drown them swiftly. They travel in packs of 3 called triads, which can fuse together into a 3-lobed entity in a similar shape as a snowman. This fusion may be a religious ritual or a defensive and hunting strategy. Animals. You will find all living creatures you would expect to find in a normal ocean on the Prime. Plankton, seaweed, fish, etc. As previously mentioned, it's not just saltwater animals you'll find here, but aquatic beings of all kinds regardless of their usual watery environment. The only exception are aquatic animals that require air, such as whales and dolphins. Additionally, the lack of gravity, at least in 2nd edition, means these mundane animals can grow to fantastic proportions, so you might find sharks or nautiluses thousands of feet long. Other races. The elemental plane of water teems with life, and so you will find many non-native aquatic races taking up residence here, such as Locathals, Ixitzichitl, reef giants, and others. They rarely get along with other races, and so the plane of water is ripe with warfare and feuds between the beautiful cities and palaces of the various aquatic species. One who could unite the various races of the plane for a single cause would be a force to be reckoned with. Monsters. Of course, you can find monstrous aquatic creatures making homes here as well, such as aboleths, krakens, vodyanoi, eyes of the deep, which are aquatic beholders, and mottled worms, which are aquatic purple worms. Powers. What powers make their realms here in the plane of water? First, let's talk about the Archomentals. The first being Ben Hadar, the prince of good aligned water elementals. He is said to be rude, boorish, and possessing enough arrogance to rival the evil fire prince Imix, to the point that he stretches the definition of good. He does fight against the evil water elementals that serve Al-Hydra and is interested in the well-being of his followers. Both Chan and Zaman Rule, Archomentals of good air and fire elementals respectively, dislike him, seeing him as narrow-minded and having no care for good-aligned elementals outside the plane of water. He resembles a tall humanoid made of sparkling blue-green water. He has massive lobster claws for hands and eyes that scintillate like the sun on a breaking wave. The other Archomental is Al-Hydra, the princess of evil water creatures. She is worshipped by a huge variety of evil aquatic creatures, even Hezru demons if the rumors are true, and is the only Archomental to have petitioners. For those of you who don't know what a petitioner is, they are the souls of mortals from the prime material plane who died and went to their afterlife. Both of these makes her the closest archelemental to becoming a true deity. She spends most of her time in her coral castle scheming against her greatest enemy, Imix, the Prince of Evil Fire, completely ignoring her good counterpart on the plane of water, Ben Hadar. She resembles a 20-foot-long, endlessly breaking wave. Some believe her petitioners become the evil water weirds, but it's more likely that she simply absorbs their souls to increase her own power. She is a coven of 3 sea hags called the Blue Coven, who serve her loyally. The story goes that the coven tried to summon and command her, but Ol Hydra was more powerful than them and easily resisted it. Instead of destroying them, she decided to embrace them as worshippers as she appreciated their guile and courage. The Blue Coven have lost their individual personalities, their minds having merged into one evil being divided into 3 bodies. Somehow, this has enhanced their spellcasting, making them some of the most powerful hags in the multiverse. Segilune, the goddess of hags, is resentful of their power and wishes to destroy these dangerous renegades. Next, we have the gods that live here. The first god is Otto, a water god in the Finnish pantheon. He spends most of his time contemplating the sea and the protection of its creatures, and is served by a cadre of reef giants who defend his home known as the Curving Wave. He is served by a proxy named the Water Dwarf. He was the king of a dwarven nation, but was lost to the plane of water when he mounted an expedition to explore an underground ocean they found by mining too deep. He died, but Otto was so impressed to find a dwarf in the plane of water that he restored him to life, replacing his body with water. Istishia, the god of elemental water. He has many names across the multiverse, but they all sound like the slaps of waves on the beach. He is as large as a small sea on the Prime, but takes a smaller form to deal with supplicants. This form is described as a towering water spout with light points for eyes and a whirlpool for a mouth. His followers believe the whole plane is composed of his body, and every drop of water in the universe is his tears or blood. All spells involving the elements are known to Istishia. He sees himself and the element of water as a whole as the great equalizer, the one that will eventually overwhelm air, erode stone, and extinguish fire. To him, all things, including the battle between good and evil, are gradually worn away like land is by a river. He is extremely patient and understands that, quote, even the highest mountain can be destroyed one pebble at a time, end quote. The concerns of insignificant mortals are not worth his time unless offered a great boon, as it would be better spent monitoring the rhythms of the tides. Blip Dualpool, the goddess of the Kuatoa, living in a gloomy region known as the Murky Depths. She is crazy and paranoid of being infiltrated by spies of Illithids or Drow, and they say people who enter the Murky Depths never come out again unless they offer her a secret or magical power. Idro, god of Lokatha and Merfolk, who worship him as their creator. Idro has been missing for a decade, as of 2nd edition, when he left and said he'd return once an important matter was resolved. Persana, patron god of Tritons, known for his intelligence and artisan skills. He is a master sculptor and architect. They say no building ever created with his help falls unless he wills it. He used to be a nomadic god, wandering the plane and helping build magnificent structures. Rumors saying he even laid the cornerstone of the Citadel of 10,000 Pearls. He has now taken residence in Shaluria, the realm of Idro, as he was called in by the Council of Proxies who rule in Idro's absence, presumably to mount an expedition to find him. Locations. Citadel of 10,000 Pearls. The Citadel of 10,000 Pearls is the greatest palace of the Marids. It is built atop a circular, free-floating, gleaming coral reef dozens of miles wide. The buildings are mostly domes with scalloped roofs, resembling giant clamshells, while others are curved, looking more like snail shells. The citadel is decorated with air fountains, curtains and carpets of kelp, swaying coral fans, and specifically selected schools of fish, all creating a multicolored display of movement and fluidity. It is illuminated by strings of glowing orbs, each 1 foot across, which resemble flawless pearls. These, in addition to the giant oyster beds, give the Citadel of 10,000 Pearls its name. Exotic flavors are also brought in by distant currents, making the Citadel a brilliant experience to the senses. The Citadel holds the court of their great Padishah, who maintains a repertoire of fantastic displays such as schools of fish that move about her in choreographed and incomprehensible patterns, powerful but precise manipulations of currents, and complex mazes of multicolored coral. At a glance, she seems to govern by whim, but those that pay attention see she is extremely skillful in political maneuvering and manipulation. In addition to their Padishah, the Citadel is populated by around 200 Marids who all believe they're the one that truly belongs on the Coral Throne. So intrigue, espionage, assassinations, revolutions, and exiles are common. There's also around 1,000 servants and various species of fish, including barracudas, piranhas, and eels that serve as watchmen and guards. Marid only tolerate outsiders if they behave themselves, and the slightest misstep or social gaffe will result in the death penalty. The most interesting location in the Citadel of 10,000 Pearls is the vast library and theater complex. It is shaped like an immense sea urchin, with spines that jut out overlooking the surrounding structures. The Marid are masterful storytellers and have a collection of entertainers from around the multiverse here at all times. You also have basically any kind of story you can imagine on its bookshelves. An outsider can earn their favor by offering a book to this library, but offering one that they already have on the shelves is considered an insult, which suffers an even greater penalty than offending a Marid. The chant is that every single Marid leaves the Citadel during certain seasons. How seasons work on the elemental plane of water, I have no idea, and I can't find them referenced anywhere else. Presumably, they go somewhere else on the plane or to the material plane where they are revered. During their absence, a wizard from the prime material plane named Haitam al-Rakal will sometimes seize the palace for himself with an army of water creatures, sometimes even using illusions to impersonate the Padishah herself. The Padishah allows this to happen because it amuses her greatly. The City of Glass. The City of Glass is the biggest and most diverse city on the Inner Planes. All types of creatures coexist here, to the point it's difficult to tell which one is the majority. It is ruled by an elected assembly of 15 individuals, and no two can be of the same race. The City of Glass is built on a giant disk of ice, and has a great dome of glass which covers the whole city. Within the dome, the bottom half is filled with water, while the top half is a trapped air bubble. However, buildings full of water exist in the air half, and others filled with air can be found on the water half. It is a diverse city that truly caters to everyone, making it the perfect place for air-breathing travelers to visit. The city has such a diverse range of merchants, it's hard to not find something for sale here. It has dozens of gates and vortices to other planar locations, giving it the nickname the Sigil of the Elements, and is an important nexus for interplanar travel. They say you can reach all of the inner planes from this one city. The Avenger. The Avenger is a giant, dark gray, mechanical manta ray built by a great artificer named Lund the Mad. It is 30 yards long, not counting the tail, and 60 yards wide, and it has a trail of rotating screws along its wings that act as a battery, allowing it to travel swiftly. Also, its tail can shoot bolts of lightning. There are two main theories that attempt to explain its existence. One is that it is an automaton wandering the plane on an unknown mission. The other is that it is a vehicle of some kind, but it seems to have no crew or home base. However, the Locathas say it is crewed by Lokatha pirates, Marids say it is rebellious Jan, and humans often say it is crewed by specters. The Murky Depths, the divine realm of Blipdualpulp, goddess of the Kuatoa. It is a murky, dirty region of the plane, hundreds of miles long. Its filth limits one's ability to breathe, causing them to suffer the effects of a stinking cloud spell and make a save each round or take 1d6 choking damage. Blipdualpulp can infuse the whole realm with the toxic qualities of a red tide at will, but it only harms those she wishes. Unlike the rest of the plane, the Murky Depths has gravity and a sea floor made of sand, where her petitioners have built a city of coral and stone. It is said to be a strange-looking place that mirrors the even stranger mind of Blipdualpulp. Her petitioners, quote, take the form of evil or chaotic thoughts that drift about, haunting and tormenting unwanted visitors, along with Blipdualpulp's more substantial agents, end quote. Sheluria, the divine realm of Idro, god of Lokatha and merfolk. It is said to be a bountiful and tranquil place to live. The living Lokotha and merfolk here mingle with the petitioners, who resemble insubstantial fish that radiate every color of the rainbow. The Ice Catacombs. At the core of one of the largest ice pockets on the plane of water is a mountain-sized iceberg. Carved inside is a giant hall, hundreds of feet tall, where aboleths and ice para-elementals dwell. Although, what they're doing there, I couldn't find an answer to. The Heart of the Sea. The Heart of the Sea is 4 bubbles of breathable air arranged in a shape similar to the 4 chambers of a human heart, complete with fast-flowing water streams taking the same path blood would. The inhabitants use the heart to test the valor of visitors by seeing if they can swim upstream through all 4 chambers without any aid or breaks to breathe. If they successfully do so, they are considered to have been embraced by Mother Ocean and gain the ability to cast water breathing on themselves once per day up to 5 times. Other locations. So besides the named locations, you also have Marid strongholds, usually built around coral reefs or elemental pockets, and free-floating masses of coral and seaweed which grow in all directions, forming planets of plant life. You also have a few locations which are named, but they didn't have any detail or descriptions of them. These are the Bubble Net, a vortex of the plane of air near the Citadel of 10,000 Pearls, the Curling Wave, the divine realm of Otto, a Finnish water god, and Gas, the realm of Ben Hadar, the prince of good-aligned water creatures. And that is all the information I could find on the elemental plane of water in Dungeons & Dragons. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and remember to subscribe for more D&D related content.